Early. All right, my friends, we are telling time. I basically am building on what we did last Tuesday when we had our telling time little PowerPoint here. And a couple of you helped me learn about why we use clocks and why they help us. You will see everywhere clocks hanging up. They'll be on the equipment in a gym. They'll be on a timer for a laundry machine. They'll be on your stove, or they'll just be hanging up on the wall. So you can always look at it to see what time it is. They tell us when it's lunchtime and time to go to special. They tell us the exact time so we don't have to, look at the sun and say, well, I know it's daytime, but is it 9 a.m. or is it noon, right? And they also tell us when to leave for an appointment. I just got a call saying that I have a doctor's appointment when summer starts beginning, and I had to ask, what time is it? So I know exactly when to leave my house, drive there, and show up. So clocks are so important. We learned that there's two types of clocks, an analog clock and a digital clock. And Adi, I was very impressed that you knew those names. An analog clock is the most special. It's the original type of clock. It's a circle with 12 numbers and 2 or 3 hands on it. That's the one that you see in our classroom a lot. But because analog clocks, although we use them, they're kind of old, or they're kind of used more for decoration, a lot of people have switched over to digital. Digital means computers. So on your phone, there's a digital clock. On your Apple Watch or your Fitbit, there's a digital clock. And if you remember from our classroom, I had a digital clock on my back table in case anyone ever needed to look at the time but didn't know how to tell time yet. It just spells it right out for you, 10:05, whereas you'd have to look at the hands on this clock. See? We talked about different types of clocks, the cuckoo clock, the sundial, watches. If you were not busy on last Friday, not doing a bunch of field day activities, which shout out to my 4 friends who did field day for our class. Thank you very much. I had the opportunity to put up how to make a sundial. So if you got a chance to make a sundial, send me some pictures. I'd love to see. So we also made our class schedule. We had 9 a.m., 10 a.m., and we made sure the big hands on the 12 and the small hands on the 9, or the big hands on the 12 and the small hands on the 10. We were singing that song, that video, to put our class schedule in order. And we learned that there's the time on a clock, we just look at those hands to tell what's happening. I just sang that song to you. Big hands on the 12, and in this case, the small hands on the 5. I would like, Stephen, can you tell us what the big hands on the 12 and the small hands on the 5, what does that mean?
5 o'clock.
That means that it's 5 o'clock. And that's because, here, I'll focus on this one. That's because the big hand is saying that 0, 0, because it's starting over. And then whichever hand the little one's pointing to, it's telling us the hour. And in that case, it would be 5 o'clock. So when you're writing the time on your homework, which you have all done amazingly, you typed it really well, you drew it really well, and you wrote it really well. So awesome job. That's why I know you're ready for half hours. If you look here, the hours go from 1 to 12 unless you're in the military. That's because they have to think of all 24 hours in a day. But we just break it down to 12 to make it easier for us. It would be very hard to fit 24 numbers here. And then the minutes go from 0 to 59. Why do you think it doesn't go to 60? I said that there's 60 minutes in an hour. Why does it go from 0 to 59? Does anyone have a guess? Ryan? Yeah, Ryan, what's your guess?
Once it gets to 60, it's the next hour.
Ryan, you're right. Once it gets to 60, he said it's the next hour. So let's say it's 2:58, 2:59. Instead of saying 2:60, Ryan, what would I change it to?
The next hour.
Which is?
3.
Yay! So once it gets to 59, it starts over and goes to 00, and the hour hand changes up. And then it goes 3:01, 3:02, 3:03, 3:04, 3:05, 3:06, 3:07, 3:08, 3:09, all the way up to 3:59. And then it would go to, and I want you to think about it, my friends. Ryan says it starts up to the next hour. So 59 becomes 60. Because we only go up to 60, it goes 00, and what changes? 3 turns into 4 o'clock. And it will just keep going up and going in a circle, because that's why the clock is in a circle, because time is just continuing. Would anyone like to tell me? We have 2 types of time, AM and PM. One of them happens in the morning, one of them happens at night. Would anyone like to take a guess about which one is which? 1 second, Riley. All right, Kenzie, can you explain to me?
Daytime is
I know it's like a 50-50 guess.
and nighttime is AM.
Are you ready to see? I'm sorry, Kenzie. This is really difficult because it's either or. AM is when the sun is coming. You could think of it as the sun saying, I am coming up. Because when we're all going to bed, the moon's out, right? But the sun starts rising while we're sleeping. So AM means the morning is coming. That sun's starting to set and the moon's starting to come out, that's called PM. So you can maybe say it's P for post-morning or after morning. That's why we call it the afternoon, which means it's after 12 o'clock. Oh, hey, Melvina, thanks for joining me on here. Don't worry, friends, you'll be learning more about AM and PM in 2nd grade. I just like to warm up your brains a little bit. Now we're moving on to telling time by the half hours. Woohoo! Look at these clocks. We have 4:30, we have 12:30, we have 9:30. I'm hoping that you'll be able to learn how to look at these clocks and read them and say them back to me just as quickly as I just did. And how will you do that? I'm going to tell you some little secrets about time when it comes to the half hour. So let's look at the hands on the clocks. My friends, make sure you're muted so that you don't show up on the screen while we're recording this, okay? That way, this is very important. We need to make sure everyone sees this. For the hands on the clock, we have the little hand and the big hand. But you can see that they're not in their normal spots. We knew the big hand to be on the 12, to say that the hour was starting over. And we knew the little hand was pointing right at a number. So kind of like this, big hand's on the 12 and the small hand's on the 8. We would know that to be 8 o'clock. But look here, the little hand is pointing in the middle of 2 numbers. Oh, how will we choose? And the big hand's not on the 12 anymore, it's on the 6. So you, as time tellers, need to now learn the special trick on how to tell them apart. I heard from you earlier that the little hand means hours and the big hand means minutes, so I don't want to bother with going through that again. But would anyone like to guess before we even jump into it what time this is? I'll let you all look at the clock. My hint is that when the big hand's on the 6, remember I said that it was half of the clock, so you know that that means half of an hour. but you'd have to know a little bit more about clocks. So would anyone like to take a guess? It's okay if you get it wrong. This is purely for fun. Dario's gonna pee himself if he doesn't get it. All right, Dario, what's up? He's shaking, he's doing the dance. He's like, ah. What do you think, Dario?
Is it 6:30?
It is not 6:30. Remember, the little hand is telling the hours. The little hand's nowhere near 6 o'clock, right?
Oh.
Take your laptop back in your room.
But that big hand on the 6 does mean 30, because 30 is half of 60. Awesome job, Dario. Would anyone like to try with Dario? We gave you a hint. Dario's taking a walk around his house. I love it. Oh, let's see. Gabriella. We had a boy try, we'll have a girl try too.
$3:06.
Remember, when the big hand's on the 12, that means it's the start of the hour. And each one of these little tiny notches, here, look, I'll even zoom in. Each one of these little tiny notches means 1 minute. So if it was 6 minutes, I'd go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So my big hand would be pointing here, but it's not. It's halfway across the clock. And Dario said that that means 30 minutes. But my friends, if you put Dario's answer and Gabriella's answer together, you make the right answer. That's my hint to you. I'll have one more friend try. Allison, go ahead. What are you thinking?
$3:30?
Are you sure? Oh my gosh, I'm nervous. Ding, 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 you got it. It is 3:30. Some of you might be going, oh, and some of you might be going, was a what? 3:30, why? And I will tell you now the secret to finding out just exactly how to tell why it's a half hour. It's 30 minutes because 30 is half of 60. Ryan and I were talking about how there's 60 minutes in an hour. It takes 60 minutes for that big hand to go in one whole circle. So if you take 6, half of it is 3, right? So half of 60 is 30. So when that big hand's on the 12, it's 0, 0. When that big hand's on the 6, that means it's 30 minutes. And that's called a half hour because it's half of one fraction. Look, there's our clock. It's half of it, right? So when you see it on the 6, know it's a half hour, but that big hand is still kind of confusing. And I call this kind of like the tortoise and the hare story. The big hand's really fast. It's going around the clock. The little hand has to catch up. So while that big hand is moving, look on my clock. You can see that while that big hand is moving, the little one starts to move too. Now the little one is moving so slowly. It has to catch up. It's like the tortoise. It's like the turtle. It has to walk really slowly. And by the time the big hand is halfway done the whole clock, look at this. I drew a red line. The little hand is halfway. Oh my gosh, hold on to your seats, my friends. This is blowing my mind. The big hand is halfway around the clock. The little hand is halfway between the two numbers. Look, it's halfway between the 12 and the 1. Now, try and think about that because over here, Allison said it was 3:30, but it was in between the 3 and the 4. Here it's between the 12 and the 1. That means that with a half hour, when it's in between the two numbers, you go to the smaller one. You go to the one that it was just at. This is insane. Look here. It's in between the 12 and the 1, 12 and the 1. So if we know that it must be 30 minutes, okay, so it must be 30 minutes. What do you think the hour is? Would anyone like to guess what that hour is? Adi, yes. What time do you think this is? Make sure you're unmuting yourself. There you are.
I guess the time is 3:10.
You're looking at this time. It's between these two numbers. So we know that it must have a 30 in it, right? Because it's halfway in the clock. Dario told us that that means 30 minutes. And the hour, it's gonna, let's see which one it smiles on. It's whichever one it just came from. And since this one was moving down, this one starts moving too. So let me put it at 12 o'clock. And as we move to 12 o'clock, you can see that we got to 12:30, and now it's in the middle. So this is actually 12:30. When it comes to the little hand, it's in the middle of two numbers. It goes back to who it was with before. So that's 12:30, yes. So that's why Allison said 3:30 here, because the big hand's on the 6, which means 30 minutes. And look here, that little hand in between the 3 and the 4, we go back to the earlier one. Which comes first, 3 or 4?
Yes.
3.
My mom even taught me that whenever the minute hand goes to 6 to 7 or 7 to 8, it means 5 minutes. 5 minutes.
Well, yes, every time this jumps to one of the big numbers, it does mean 5 minutes. Well, right now we're just talking about really big movements, when it's on the 12 or when it's on the 6. This is definitely a game that you have to do standing up, otherwise I'm going to hit the ground. So thank you, Adi, for playing along. My friends, this is 12:30. When it's in the middle of two numbers, you go back to the earlier one. I wouldn't go to 1 because that's moving more on the clock. I have to go back on the clock to tell what time I was at. Well, there's a brand new song. This one's just as catchy as the other one. It's by the same guy. This one talks about half hours. And on Thursday, I'll give you a really funny song that talks about half hours and whole hours. And it does both, and it's a little kid telling a story in a song. Well, more like a rap song. So I definitely hope you listen to it. Let's do a couple together. So like Adi says, here's a clock, and it'll go by 5 minutes. So that's why, if you do 5, 6 times, that's why it's 30. But you just need to know that half of a clock is 30 minutes. If you're still confused, I totally understand, because time is difficult. Remember, I told you I didn't get that good at time until I was in 5th grade. So for some of you, you probably saw it in kindergarten and are amazing at it. And some of you are probably okay right now saying, I get it, Miss Remitz, I guess, but I'll get a couple wrong. And some of you are probably looking at me like this, just wondering what is happening. And that's okay. You do not need to know time in 1st grade. I'm just showing you it so that you can, over the summer, start looking at your clocks, maybe make a couple of sundials. All right, let's practice this. It says it's 9:30, and I'll show you why. Because, and it's a little blurry, I'm sorry, the big hand's on the 6 and the small hand's in between the 9 and the 10. See that there? Well, if it's in between two numbers, we go back. We go back. If it's a half, you go back. Half back, half back. Which, isn't a half back a football position? I don't remember. Anyways, let's put these red circles on the times. So if it's between the 9 and the 10, What number do we go back to? Anyone know? It's in between the 9 and the 10. What number do we go back to? Thanks, Samarth. Yeah.
We go back to the 9 and how? Wait, could you see me?
Yeah. You turned it off for a second. So we go back to the 9. So it's 9 hours and 30 minutes. So that means that it's 3:30, nah. 6:30, nah. 9:30.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks, Samarth. Let's look at this next one. Zoom on into it. I see the big hands on the 6, which means 30 minutes, and the small hand, ooh, it's in between the 4 and the 5. Samarth, I can hear you, so can you hear me? Can you see this all right, Samarth?
I could see it perfectly.
But do you see these two?
Yeah.
All right, so look, my friends, the big hand's on the 6 and the small one's in between the 4 and the 5. So you have a 4 and a 5. You have to go back to whichever one the hand was at first. And normally that means the smaller number. So is it 4:30, 5:30, or 6:30? Think to yourself. I know it can't be 6:30 because the big hand's not even touching the 6. It's nowhere near the 6. The little hand is not touching the 6. It's nowhere near the 6. So it can't be 6:30. Give me a thumbs up if you think it's 4:30. No, show me with your fingers. Is it 4:30 or 5:30? It looks like this. Let's see. Some of you are saying 4. You have a 5, 4, 4, 4. Some of you are looking at your friends and then putting the number up. Come on, my friends. You can grow as your own mathematicians. All right. It is 4:30. It's 4:30 because if you had a 4 and a 5, you have to go back to the number that was there first. So we were at 4 o'clock, and as soon as that big hand passed that little hand, oh boy, they got in. Oh, there you go, got stuck. They got in between each other, and now it's in between the hour. We'll try one more time, looking at this last one here, and then we might not have time, so I'll show you your homework. But we have the big hands on the 6 and the small hands in between the 9 and the 8. So think to yourself, it's in between the 9 and the 8, the little hand. The little hand tells us the hour. It tells us that first number. So is it 6:30, 8:30, or 9:30? That big hand is on the 6, which means 30 minutes. That's little hand, that small hand is in between the 8 and the 9. Now you can only show me you have to use all your fingers for this, basically. Do you think it's 9:30 or do you think it's 8:30? It's in between the 9 and the 8, so you have to jump back to the number that it was already. Jump back to it, okay? So show me with your fingers, what are we thinking? Bella, Julian, Josiah. My friends, you only have a few days of school left. My question is, do you think it's 8:30 or 9:30? Looking here, do you think it's 8:30 or 9:30? Let's see, we're saying 8:30, yay! Wow, you all got it, awesome job. Would anyone like to tell us why it's 8:30? Sure, Stephen. Why do you think it's 8:30? I'll make it bigger so everyone can see.
Because the small hand is in
In between?
near like in between the 9 and the 8, but it's before the 9, so we know it's in the 8. And
You're right. It didn't even get to the 9 yet. So why would it be 9:30? It won't be 9:30 until it passes the 9. Awesome job. That's another way to look at it. You know, if it's in the middle, you have to go back to the smaller number. But Stephen made you realize that you need to actually touch that number first before you can say that it's been there. If it hasn't even touched the 9 yet, how can we say it's 9:30? Awesome job, Stephen. Let me see. We will do a one, and then we'll take our break. Here's our class schedule again, but I switched it up a bit. I now have morning recess. When we did this last week, I was showing you that school starts at 9 a.m., which is true. It did this morning. And so we were doing full hours. The big hands on the 12 and the small hands on the 9. The 12 means 00, starting over. And the little hand pointing to a number means what hour it is. But some of you ride the bus, and some of you are daycare students. So you get to school early. Morning recess starts at 8:30 a.m. So let's see what we think it would look like. Well, Dario told us that 30 minutes is when the big hand's on the 6. And I know that with a half hour, it's not touching a number, it's in the middle of 2. So I would need it to have touched the 8, like Stephen said, but not have touched the 9 yet. So it should be in the middle between the 8 and the 9. There we go, that's 8:30. Now, my friends, I need your help. How can I make 11:30? Oh, that was supposed to say AM, excuse me. There we go. Writing starts at 11:30 a.m., which means in the morning time. What do you think it would look like to show 11:30? Who can I call on? What do you think it would look like to show 11:30? Kenzie, I'm so impressed with you. You're trying really hard. You can show us. Yeah, what do you think 11:30 would be?
11:30 would be the big hand on the 6.
Ooh, because it shows 30 minutes. Okay, big hand on the 6.
And the small hand on the in the middle of.
Ooh, yes, she said in the middle instead of on. Oops, I went back. There you go.
Of 12 and 11.
Ooh, let's see. This one might help with that. Like this girl, is that what you're envisioning?
Yeah.
Big hand on the 6 means 30 minutes. If it's in the middle of 2 numbers, you have to go back to the earlier one, the one that's already touched, and that would be the 11. It's in the middle of 11 and 12. Kenzie, high five. Awesome job. Kenzie got it. See, my friends, when it comes to time, you kind of have to piece it together like a puzzle. Now for my last one of the day before I show you your homework and you can take a break. Ooh, we're in PM. We had lunch already and now we had recess. Special starts at 1:30 p.m. Now, what do you think it will look like? Where is that big hand? Where is that little hand? Okay, 1:30. Who would like to try it out? Anyone who hasn't really tried anything today, I can help you walk through it. You don't have to get something right away to be able to try it in front of the class. You can just try and walk through it with me. I'd rather you do that than just try it on your homework and not figure out what's happening. Oh, you want to, Bella? Are you up to the challenge? All right, Bella, come on down. Do, 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 do. All right, Bella. Special starts at 1:30. Where do you think, let's start with the big hand. Where do you think the big hand should go?
Um, on the
Do you want options?
yeah.
All right. Well, if it's on the 12, that means an hour is starting over. But if it's on the 6, that means it's already halfway through the hour. So do you think it should be on the 12 or the 6 to show that it's 1:30?
12.
Okay, so it's on the 12. That means the hour's starting over. So that would look like this. Let me type it out for you. When the big hand's on the 12, that means, oops, I made giant smiley faces. Here, I'll make it super big for you to see. Watch this. There we go. This means 00 because the minutes started over again. When the big hand goes halfway around a clock, that's 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, 25 minutes, 30 minutes. So if the big hand's on the 12, that means it's 0 minutes. But we want 30 minutes. So we would go to the 6. And our time would look like this. So now, Bella, we got halfway done. We want to make 1:30. We got the 30 minutes. Now we need the little hand to tell us the hour. Where do you think it should go to show 1:30?
On the 1.
So if it goes on the 1, remember we said that if it goes on the 1, that means it's the start of a new hour. But with half hours, it never touches the hour. It always goes past it. So it has to be in between two numbers, the hour that it was already on and the hour it's going to. So if we want it to look like 1:30, it's not going to become 12 o'clock or 6 o'clock. What do you think comes after 1 o'clock?
2 o'clock.
Yeah, so when it comes to a half hour, it has to be in between the hour it was on, 1 o'clock, and the hour it's going to, 2 o'clock. So it's in the middle of 1 and 2 o'clock. So to show 1:30, it actually looks like this. It's in between 1 and 2. As Steven says, it passes the 1 and it's making its way to the 2. And like you and I just figured out, the 6 means 30 minutes. Awesome job, Bella. Way to help me out. Because Bella helped us finish our class schedule. So Bella, if you were in our classroom right now and we had to go to special, you could look around and look at the clock and it would look exactly like this. So if any of you have a clock right now, you'll see that it's the big hand on the 12 and the small hand on the 10. Does anyone know what time that would be? What do you think, Bella? Big hands on the 12 and the small hands on the 10.
12 o'clock. I mean 10 o'clock.
Big hands on the 12, small hands on the 10. Ding, ding. Yes, Bella. It would be 10 o'clock. Or, well, would be. It is 10 o'clock right now. So the minute hand's starting to move a little bit. Thank you, Bella. My friends, today you have 2 pages in your math workbook. They look like this. And these deal with time to the half hour. Let me just see. Yep, that's what I thought. It's only half hour, so don't worry. You'll get really good at pressing those 30 minutes. If you ever forget what we learned about today, I have my whole PowerPoint that we're doing right here ready for you. And I have that new video. It's really catchy and repetitive, which means it goes on and on and on. So it'll really get sucked into your head. If you were a little confused, like some of my friends were while helping me, then absolutely listen to that song. But for now, I'll let you take a little break, and then we will start our writing